to Groups. We are kicking off a new series here with Becca. Thanks for joining us from Early Childhood.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you. And we are, as we kick off this series, we're going to be going through the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus describes what it looks like to live a good life. And sometimes it's not what we think it is. As we get into this, maybe kicking off here, we know what maybe a good life looks like, but what does a good day look like?
So for me, I'm in that phase of life where I have two small kids. And so for me, like waking up and having that quiet cup of coffee, getting to read for a little bit, and then everyone getting out the door on time is the start of a really good day.
Yeah.
What about you?
The days when you're like waking up late and all of that, it's just like, I long for that good day when things just line in. For me, a good day, I mean, my kids are a little bit older, so it is a little bit easier to kind of manage my own. They can make their own lunches, all that good stuff. For me, though, a good day would be probably going to a coffee shop and maybe just getting to read a book. Spend some time just doing something I want to do. But I'm what they call ambivert. Like, I like my alone time, but then at some point I need to go out and be social. So maybe I would do that, and then at night, like, go out and do something with my family, like go to a ball game or just something fun. So
That's fun.
That's a good day.
Yeah. Maybe add a little nature in there for me, so we have a
Yeah.
little more introverted. I feel like, or I'm like, I just want to be alone.
All right, so perfect day. Perfect days hopefully end up leading to a good life. What do you think the phrase "the good life" means to you?
For me, I think looking back on your life and being able to see some kind of impact or some kind of purpose that your life had. And I feel like that can look really different depending on who you are. So you might, like my grandmother, right? Like, she was very quiet, like read her Bible, she took care of her family, and by the end, her life was not easy, but you can see the impact that she had on people around her. I feel like that's a good life.
Mm-hmm. Which is so different than, like, we turn on the TV, we're fed this different version of what the good life means. Like, all the shows about you need to own a yacht and have front row seats to an NBA game and eat the best foods and all of that. At the end of the day, when we really take that step back, and I'm like, that doesn't really lead to anything, or the fulfillment of being at the end of our lives and saying, she lived a good life.
I think of the Pinterest moms, right? Like, we have to have everything so organized and like make these really cutesy lunches for your kids and all these holiday decorations that you're going to spend hours making and stuff like that. That's kind of what we're fed if we look at our other places.
Yeah, we can spend like kind of the macro, the micro and the macro, like the micro of the day-to-day. We can spend so much time stressing, worrying about all of those things, thinking it leads to something that it just doesn't. And we get to the pull out a little bit, get to the macro and be like, oh, like a good life is that I spent time with my kids, or I invested in other people, I lived generously, whatever it might be. And Jesus is in this teaching, he's pulling us back and saying, hey, like, let's take this eternal perspective or this lifelong perspective of when you get to the end of your life, what does it look like to have a solid foundation and a solid life? And so that's what his teaching leads us to. It's not the easiest thing to follow all of his instructions, but Jesus' Sermon on the Mount is this invitation into the good life. We read about it in Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. It's kind of weird because it's this wide open invitation to walking a narrow path. And sometimes we can think of Jesus' narrow path and think that is so exclusive, Jesus. But really, it's this wide invitation. We got to remember the invitation is wide, but the road is narrow. He says, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Again, it's this wide invitation to walking a narrow path. Anything that you want to
Yeah, what always stands out to me in that verse is when he says, you find it, right? Like that means you have to seek it.
Yeah.
It's easy to see where everyone else is going into this like wide gate, right? But if you want the good life, you gotta look for it.
Yeah.
Like, and that means seeking. And to me, I always think of seeking Him, seeking this good life with Him.
Yeah, look for it, fight for it. A book that I wanted to let you know about is called The Narrow Path. There's a QR code there. You can scan that to find it on Amazon. I think they sell it at Target too, but it's The Narrow Path. There have been so many books written on the Sermon on the Mount. This is the greatest sermon ever preached, and so there's so many books out there. This is a more recent one. I just want to read a little bit from it. It says, how you approach this sermon changes everything. If you see it as an instruction manual for salvation, every time you fail to live up to Jesus' words, you will question whether God is for you. Don't miss this. The sermon is not how we achieve salvation, it's how we demonstrate it. Those who have been transformed by Jesus resist the cultural norms around them. Thus, this sermon is a litmus test to help us assess whether we are following Jesus or someone else. In this way, the sermon is invitation and inventory. It invites us into a different way of seeing, hearing, and being. And then he goes on and shares this passage of scripture from Isaiah. It says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither your ways my ways, declares the Lord. And the heavens are higher, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." And then one more verse to share with us as we think about the good life. Jesus says this in John 10:10. The thief comes to do nothing but steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly. So the good life, it leads to abundant life, but we gotta seek that out.
Yeah, you gotta seek it out. And it's not so much what you're giving up, what you're missing out on. Like, I feel like sometimes you can read that passage and you think like, oh my gosh, this is a big list of do's and don'ts, and
Yeah.
It's easy to focus on what you're giving up, but it's actually, like you said, a very wide invitation to this amazing life that God has for us.
That leads to life, not just for us, but for others as well. The last question that we're going to kind of close on today is like, what stops us from walking the good paths that Jesus lays out for us? I think, too, going back to that verse of John 10:10, it says, the thief comes to steal, to kill, destroy. And he's been doing this ever since the beginning of time. That we go even back to Adam and Eve in the garden, and they could choose any tree except for this one. And the thief that comes to steal, kill, and destroy comes to them and says, hey, did God really say? Did God really say that you would die if you ate from that? And I think we face those same temptations today. Is the Jesus way, is that really true? Like, is giving all that up worth it? And hopefully we'll find that Jesus' words, and we remind ourselves over and over that we're walking a path that leads to life.
Yeah, and that enemy, I mean, he's a really good liar. Like you said, he's been at it for a while. It's easy for him to get in our heads, and it's easy for us to get distracted from that, what we're seeking, what we're really after. Because, and especially like we talked about in our phase, like we're busy, we're on the go, so it's easy to get distracted from seeking that good life.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me in this conversation. Thanks for joining us. This week and throughout this series, a good challenge for you in Scripture might be to read the Sermon on the Mount once a week, every week, and just let it be an invitation to the good life. Let it be this introspection of how am I doing? Not in a way to beat yourself up over it, but how am I doing at choosing the paths that lead to life? You'll find that in Matthew chapter 6, 7, 8, and 9, and just enjoy reading that on your own and enjoy your group. As always, be a group that is no